All right, guys, we're going to get started today. We're going to be talking about, coming from section 1-3, and we're going to be talking about solving absolute value equations. For that. All right. So today, the video is going to be comprised of, first of all, we're going to talk about what is an absolute value equation, how to evaluate expressions, solving equations. So solving these absolute value equations, actually solving the equations themselves. And there's kind of two things that you need to be aware of. We're going to talk about them. So we're going to talk about I would say just regular ones. We're going to talk about an odd case. And we're going to talk about variables on the inside and out. What is an absolute value? What does that mean? Well, what it technically is you can think about it as if I have this number line, right? Okay. And I've got my number line, and let's look at 2 points. Let's look at 2 and let's look at -2. Okay. Well, the absolute value is the distance between 0 and the point that I'm talking about, and the number that I'm talking about. So the distance between 0 and 2 is just 2, right? And the distance between 0 and -2 is also 2. So if you think about it, we can say absolute value is the distance between 0 and the number. Between 0 and the number. Now, why is this important? Because let's say, for example, that you are at your house, okay? Or let's say Billy is at his house. Okay, I'm sure you all love my drawings, right? So Billy is at his house and he wants to go to, I don't know, Sandra's house. Okay. Or he might want to go to Connor's house. All right. So let's say, just kind of using this example here, Billy's house, we'll call Billy's house at 0, right? And let's say that to get to Connor's house, we could think about this as him going forwards. Okay. If he was going to Connor's house, he'd be going forward, right? So if he's walking on the straight line to Connor's house, let's say Connor's house is about, 200 yards away. Okay. And let's say that he's living in some weird apocalyptic society in which he can only walk forward to go to Connor's house. Okay. If he wants to go to Sandra's house, he has to walk backwards. But Sandra's house is also 200 yards away. So what you could think about it is this: he's walking forward to go to Connor's house. So it's like plus 200 feet, 200 steps or something like that. And since he's walking backward to Sandra's house, that's like minus 200 steps. Okay. Once again, not a perfect example, but you get the idea. We're going backwards to get to Sandra's house. We're going forward to get to Connor's house. Okay. But notice the amount of space is still the same. So the absolute value says, okay, well, how far is it from Billy to Sandra's house? Well, it's 200 yards, even if he's going in a backwards direction. And that's what absolute value tells us. It tells us the exact amount between 2 points, the exact amount. It doesn't care about direction. Here, the negative and the positive, that has to do with your direction. Where are we going, right? Am I going forward to Connor's house, or am I going backward to Sandra's house? So how do we evaluate these absolute value expressions? Well, suppose you had the expression x plus 5, and these 2 bars, that's the absolute value sign. Let's say x plus 5, and let's say I had x is equal to -3. Okay. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to substitute in for x, and we'll have -3 plus 5 And we have negative 3 plus 5 is going to be 2, right? Because it's 5 minus 3, basically. And the absolute value of 2, well, what's the distance between 0 and 2? Well, it's just 2, so that would be your answer. Okay? What if we had the expression 4y minus 6 plus 8, and let's say that y was equal to 3? Well, what we would do in this instance is we would say, okay, I'm going to plug in for y for 3, so I'll have 4 times 3 minus 6 plus 8. 4 times 3 is 12, minus 6 plus 8. And then 12 minus 6 is just 6. The absolute value of 6 is 6 plus 8, and we get 14. All right, so far it's been pretty simple. What if instead I have negative 2a minus 3, and I have that a is equal to negative 1/3. Okay, so once again, you shouldn't be afraid of fractions. We're just going to use them. So we got negative 2 times negative 1/3 with substitution. Then you're going to multiply this out. You have negative times a negative. That's a positive. Notice we're not doing anything. We're not changing any signs or anything yet. You do everything you can inside of the absolute value first, and then we talk about changing things. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute. So you have negative 2 times negative 3. That's going to be positive 2 over 3. Then we've got minus 3. Now, to subtract two fractions, we need to turn this 3 into a fraction. Since this 3 is in the denominator and the other side, we're just going to multiply this by 3 over 3. So I assume you know how to subtract fractions and do all that stuff, right? Now we got 2 over 3 minus 9 over 3. That's going to give me negative 7 over 3, which then the absolute value of negative 7 over 3 is going to be positive 7 over 3. Remember, the distance between negative 7 over 3 and 0 is going to be 7/3. All right, so the last problem that we're going to evaluate, we have 3/1/4, okay, minus 3 halves x plus 1/4. And we've got it so that x, we're evaluating when x is equal to 2. So we're going to do what we did the other problems, right? We're going to have 3/1/4, and we don't do anything to that for now, minus, and then we're going to have 3 halves times 2 plus 1/4. All right, so then you have 3/1/4 again. Could I turn this into a improper fraction? Yes, but I'm not going to, and you'll see why in a minute. So these 2's cancel out here, and you're just left with 3 plus 1/4. Now 3 plus 1/4 is just 3/1/4, and the absolute value of that is just 3/1/4. So really we have here 3/1/4 minus 3/1/4, which anything subtracted by itself, the answer is 0. All right, now we're going to talk about solving, and there's 3 cases that we're going to really look at. The first one is what you have when you have something like x minus 8 or x minus 9, the absolute value of x minus 9 equals 10. What do we do in this situation? Well, let's think about what is it that we are saying. We know that the absolute value is the distance between some number and 0, right? So we know the absolute value of this expression right here has to be 10. In other words, we say that this piece right here on the left is 10 units away from 0. But just like in our first problem with the house, we don't know if we're going, what direction we're going in. We don't know if we're going in a positive direction We don't know if we're going in the negative direction. So there are two cases that we need to think about. Case one, we need to think about if x minus 9 is equal to 10 itself, if we're going in a positive direction. And case two that we need to think about is if we're going in a negative direction. In other words, you take this number over here, okay? You take this number over here and you set it up so that you have x minus 9 equals 10 or x minus 9 equals negative 10, and you deal with the two cases separately, okay? So this is the number that you have positive, and then take this number and make it negative. So if we're going in a positive direction, then we have just a one-step equation here. You can add 9 to both sides, you end up with x equals 19. Or if we're going in a negative direction, we add 9 to both sides, and you end up with x equals negative 1. Now, what I want to do here real quick is I want to check to make sure if x equals 19, we can say 19 minus 9 equals 10. And let's see if this is right. We have 19 minus 9. That's going to be positive 10. Absolute value 10 is 10. So that indeed is correct. All right. Now, what if instead we use negative 1? All right. So the absolute value of negative 1 minus 9 equals 10. It gives us the absolute value of 10 equals 10. Of course, the distance between 0 and negative 10 is 10, and therefore this is correct also. So once again, it's very important when dealing with absolute value, right, that you think, okay, this number is just telling me how far away I am from 0. It's not telling me what distance. Am I going positive or am I going in a negative direction? Okay, I want to do two problems really briefly. We've got 9 equals x plus 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the problem and then I'm going to check it. So once again, as always, we know we've got two cases to deal with. We've got the case where x plus 3 equals 9. And we have the case where x plus 3 equals negative 9. You can't barely see that negative, but it's there. All right, so we're going to subtract 3 from both sides for this one. You end up with x equals 6. Boom, that's one answer. Subtract 3 once again. Negative 9 minus 3 is negative 12, so you end up with x equals negative 12. Now what I want to do real quick is I want to check and make sure that I'm right. So we've got 9 equals 6 plus 3, which of course means that the absolute value of 9 is 9. And we know that is correct, so that's good. Then we want to see, okay, is 9 equal to negative 12 plus 3? And we can see that 9 equals the absolute value of negative 9 because negative 12 plus 3 is negative 9. And of course it is. So there we go. Now the second problem that I want to do, we have 8 equals x minus 5. And once again, we got the two cases. Case one is that you have x minus 5 equals 8, or you have x minus 5 equals negative 8. All right. So in this case, once again, one-step equations. Plus 5, x equals 13, plus 5, x equals negative 3. Now to check, once again, we'll just plug these back in. If x equals 13, we'd have 8 equals 13 minus 5. 8 then is equal to the absolute value of 8, which is, obviously correct here, right? Then if we have a negative 3, we've got 8 equals negative 3 minus 5, absolute value. 8 equals the absolute value of negative 8, which of course is just 8. So there we go. What if you have absolute value of x equals negative 4? I want you to take a minute and think about it. If you got that this cannot exist, you're absolutely correct. Well, why can't it exist? What's the definition of absolute value? Absolute value is the distance between a number and zero. -4 cannot not be a distance. And therefore, this thing right here, absolute value of x equals -4, cannot exist. So whenever you deal with a number where you say, okay, well, absolute value equals some negative number, that can't exist. That can't be. It doesn't. Uh, there's no way that's going to exist. So this is something we have to be on the lookout for. We have to be mindful of and be thinking about. So if you see a problem like that on a quiz or a test or something like that, you should automatically know. I mean, it could even be a long, drawn out problem. It could be something like absolute value of x minus 5 plus 13x equals -77. Or, well, actually, let's put it, let's erase this. We could say x minus 5 plus 13 equals -77. And we'll talk about doing problems like this in just a minute. And you would subtract 13 from both sides, and you end up with -90 here, and x minus 5 equals -90. Well, once again, if you have absolute value, and that's all you've got on the left, and you've got a negative on the right, that cannot exist, right? You cannot have a negative as an absolute value because negative numbers are not a distance. All right, so what do we do if we have the absolute value, say, I don't know, x minus 5 plus 3 equals 8? What do you do in this case? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to deal with the outside of the absolute value first, then deal with the absolute value. In other words, you want to isolate the absolute value. Okay, you want to get this by itself, then deal with it. So in this case, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. Then we have x minus 5 equals 5. Now, you should know how to deal with this at this point, right? It's going to be two cases. You'd have x minus 5 equals 5. And in the other case, x minus 5 equals -5. You're going to add 5 to both sides here, which gives you x equals 0. Or you add 5 to both sides, which gives you x equals 10. Then you can check it by going 10 minus 5 plus 3 equals 8. And yes, I'm going to kind of go fast through this. It's going to be 5. The absolute value of 5 plus 3 equals 8. And of course, you know, you can say then the absolute value of 5 is just 5. So 5 plus 3 equals 8. This definitely checks out. All right. For the other one, we want to say, okay, the absolute value of 0 minus 5 plus 3 equals 8. So then we have the absolute value of -5 plus 3 equals 8. The absolute value of -5 is 5 itself, plus 3 equals 8. This is definitely a true statement, and that is the answer here. All right, what if you have the problem? The absolute value of 3x plus 3 minus 8 equals 1. What do we have this problem? Well, let's do it. So we got the absolute value 3x plus 3, and then we would add 8 to both sides, right, to get rid of it. So that gives you 9. Then we deal with the two cases. We have 3x plus 3 equals 9, and we've got 3x plus 3 equals -9. Okay, and so then we subtract 3 from both sides. You end up with 3x equals 6. Therefore, x equals 2. Why? Because if we divide both sides by 3, x would be equal to 2. If we subtract 3 from both sides over here, we've got 3x equals -12. So then x equals -4. Why? Because -12 divided by 3, of course, is -4. Now we've got two cases, and we need to put them together to make sure that makes sense. So we got 3 times 2 plus 3 for the first case minus 8 equals 1. And let's see if this works. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 3, and we got that in there. If 8 equals 1, then we got, this is going to be the absolute value of 9, minus 8 equals 1. Absolute value of 9 is just 9, minus 8 equals 1. This is indeed a true statement because 9 minus 8 is 1, and then, of course, 1 equals 1. This is the correct answer. Now, let's check the other one just to make sure. We've got 3 times negative 4 plus 3 minus 8 equals 1. Remember, we're just substituting the answers that we got in the original problem back into the original problem, okay? So then we're going to have negative 12 plus 3 minus 8 equals 1. Negative 12 plus 3 is negative 9 minus 8 equals 1. Absolute value of negative 9 is just 9. Remember, it's the distance between 0 and negative 9 is just 9. 9 minus 8 is 1 equals 1. Once again, we have checked it out. It is correct. Now, what if you have variables on the inside and outside of the equation? Like, for example, what if you have something like x plus 6, I don't know, plus x equals, okay, what if you have x plus 6, the absolute value of x plus x equals 20? All right, what would we do in this case? Well, what we would say is, first of all, just like before, we're going to subtract x from both sides because we're going to get the absolute value portion alone. And we've got this quantity on the left, negative x plus 20. Now, what you do from here is basically it's the same thought process. We're going to have one case where x plus 6 equals negative x plus 20. And we're going to have another case where x plus 6 equals negative x plus 20. Notice what I did there. I took the entire quantity on the right and we're making that negative. You see that? It's the whole quantity on the right. So be careful when you do this problem. So let's fix this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put all the x's on one side. We're going to put all the numbers on the other side. So we end up with plus x over here, plus x over here, which gives us 2x plus 6 equals 20. And we subtract 6 from both sides. And then we get 2x equals 14. So then we have now x equals 7 because 14 divided by 2 is 7. So that's one answer. Now let's take a look at this side. We have x plus 6, and then we distribute this negative out to both. So you end up with positive x minus 20. And then what you're going to do is you're going to subtract x from both sides, which, wait a minute, that gives us 6 equals 20. Well, what happened? This definitely can't be correct, right? Well, the reason for that is because there's only one answer here. Okay, there's only one answer in this case. Why is that? Well, think about it this way. Before, all we had to deal with in terms of our variables is what was inside the absolute value, okay, which leaves us room for either a positive or a negative answer. But when you have a variable on the outside, now we have to decide, am I going positive or am I going negative? Because I'm no longer shielded by this absolute value piece. So let's just check this real quick. And we're going to with 7 plus 6, so the absolute value 7 plus 6, and then plus 7 equals 20. We can see the absolute value 7 plus 6 is 13. Absolute value of 13 plus 7 equals 20, which of course gives us 13 plus 7 equals 20. We know this is true. We have 20 equals 20, right? So obviously, yes, this is correct. However, once again, in this case, because we had an x on the outside of the absolute value, we only ended up with one answer. And honestly, this will happen very often, that you only get one answer will be correct when you have an unknown, a variable on the outside of the absolute value in the beginning of the problem. So be on the lookout for that. That's why I've been checking every problem that we've done so far. And that's why it's important to check your work. Okay, let's do some more problems. Let's say that you have the absolute value of x plus 6. So let's hold on to that for a second. Let's say you have minus x equals 6x minus 12. Ooh. And it might seem like it's very complicated, but it's actually not that bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to add x to both sides. Remember, we're trying to get the absolute value by itself first. You get x plus 6 equals 7x minus 12. Now, what we do is we deal with our two cases. Case 1, we've got x plus 6 equals 7x minus 12. In case 2, we have x plus 6 equals negative and then 7x minus 12. Okay? So on the the left portion, in case 1, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to actually put the x's on this side and the numbers on the other side. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. You end up with 6 equals 6x minus 12. And then I'm going to put the numbers on the other side. So I'm going to add 12 to both sides. You end up with 6x equals 18. Okay, now I'm going to divide both sides by 6, which then gives me x equals, we can say x equals 3, or 3 equals x. Both, symmetrical, so it doesn't matter which way we have it. X equals 3 or 3 equals x is correct. All right, let's do the other one. We have x plus 6 on the left, and then we're going to distribute this negative sign out. So negative 7x plus 12. And then what you're going to do is kind of same thing. I'm going to bring this over here. I'm going to bring this over here. I'm going to subtract x from both sides, and I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides, which will then give me negative 6 equals negative 8x, which means then x equals negative 6 over 8, which then means that x equals 3/4. And then what I mean to say is negative 6 over negative 8, because we got negative here. A negative over a negative is just a positive. Just like with multiplication, you multiply two negatives, you get a positive. If you divide two negatives, you get a positive as well. So this is our answer. Now, only one of these is correct. So what do we have to do? You're right. We got to check it. All right. So now we're going to check it. We're going to say, okay, I've got 3 plus 6, or the absolute value, 3 plus 6, minus 3 equals 6 times 3 minus 12. Okay. So once again, I'm just taking this answer and putting it back into the original equation. So we've got the absolute value of 9 minus 3 equals 3 times 6 is 18 minus 12. So we have the absolute value of 9 is just 9 minus 3 equals 18 minus 12. 18 minus 12 is 6. 9 minus 3 is 6. It checks out. And so we can kind of go ahead and guess the other one probably won't work out, but we still need to check it. So let's see. So we've got positive 3/4 plus 6 minus 3/4 equals 6 times 3 over 4 minus 12. And so we're going to check it here. 3/4 plus 6 is going to give us 6 3/4. Absolute value 6 3/4 minus 3/4. And then on the right hand side, we're going to have 6 3/4. Okay, 6 times 4 is 24 plus 3 is, this is going to be 27 over 4. Minus 12 is going to be 48 over 4. Right? Once again, you should know how to add and subtract fractions. Now, if we have this, what we can now say is 6. The absolute value of 6 3/4 is 6 3/4 minus 3/4 is just going to be 6. Okay. In this answer, on the right side, we've got negative, let's see, It's going to be negative 21 fourths, right? This obviously is not going to be the same, right? Because negative 21 over 4 is going to be kind of like, let's see, I'm just doing it in my head, but it's going to be like 5 1/4. But even if it was close, there's still negative right here. So that's obviously correct. All right, I hope you found that video helpful. I try to do as many exercises and problems as I can. Please comment below on anything you would like me to cover. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.